Welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jesse Ott, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. Hello, everybody. I wanted to wish Ford's Gin a very special happy 12th birthday. It is so cool to be able to share our 12th birthdays together. Yes, that's right. I am a leap year baby. I've been so excited to post this today. Y'all are going to love Simon and listening to his journey of creating Forged Gin. You really are. He's genuinely an amazing guy and created an amazing gin and has really impacted many in our industry. Thank you, Simon. Enjoy, everybody. Peace out. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am Jesse Ott, and I have Simon Ford of Forged Gin today. Hi, Simon.
Hi, Jesse. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to have you on. I've just been jumping around all day.
Hey, I love it. We get to talk all things fun, cocktails and gin.
Exactly. I love gin too. I really do. I really love gin.
Yeah.
So where are you calling from today?
I'm in Nashville, Tennessee at the
Nashville,
moment.
Tennessee. Awesome city.
It is a great city and no one ever expects me to be here.
No.
It's like whenever I say I'm in Nashville, Tennessee, it is what are you doing in Nashville?
Yeah, I'm like, do you live there? Is that someone's home that you're squatting
No,
in?
I do live here, which, obviously the gin, and we'll talk about it later, is made in London, so I get to go home to London a lot. The distribution and marketing of Forged Gin is done in Louisville, Kentucky, at the Brown-Forman offices. So this is actually quite a convenient location because there's a direct flight to London from Nashville.
Nuh-uh.
And I can get down to Louisville, Kentucky, and to your point, it's a cool town. So I've been here not that long, but and I don't know if I'll stay here. I probably won't, but it's a great experience to get a few years living here.
Yeah, for sure. I've never met anyone that really didn't like it there, or I mean, obviously
Yeah.
visited or lived. And everybody goes there, at least in the music world. I remember, gosh, it was 4 years ago because it was my last leap year birthday. I got to spend the day with Jimmy Russell at a on bass at a bourbon tasting, and he signed my bottle. Oh, so awesome.
Yeah.
And then I felt so bad to leave him because we were going into Nashville to hang out and ended up seeing Joe Walsh play guitar.
No
Oh
way.
yeah, it was just what a
Wow.
birthday.
That's great. And honestly, there is a lot of music going on all the time. One of my first experiences here was going to the Food and Wine Festival. Now I've been to the Aspen Food and Wine Festival. I've been to the New York Food and Wine, Charleston Food and Wine. And so I was curious as to what Nashville's would be like. And lo and behold, there's a stage with musicians, and on that stage were some of the most sort of famous Nashville artists performing just ad hoc. They were dressed in 70s disco gear, and there was the Kings of Leon and Sheryl Crow and all of these different stars from Nashville deciding to play the Food and Wine Festival, where most people were there for the food, the wine, and the cocktails. So it's sort of music sort of plays a role in so many facets of life here, and I love that about it.
Yeah, that's
Who
true.
doesn't love music?
And it still has that small kind of, probably as a resident, that small town kind of feel to it.
Mm.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think that's the only thing I struggle with a little bit. Prior to this, I lived in LA. Before that, it was New York, and before that, it was London. I loved big cities. The bigger, the better. I thought I was going to end up either in Tokyo or Mexico City next, and in Nashville. The one thing I do struggle a little bit with is it is quite small,
Yeah.
but but it's actually, this will be one of the USA's next big cities without a doubt.
Yeah.
The rapid pace at which it's growing, and the exciting things that are happening here, it's quite nice to watch. New developments, bars, and some of it's super cool.
Yeah.
Some bars took me down to an old arcade. I guess it was built in the 1900s, and they're transforming it into bars, restaurants, and it's all the cool places. And I'm like, this is amazing, and it's happening every other week here. It feels like.
Yeah, that is awesome. I've had the I've lived in Dallas now for I don't know how long, 15, 20 years or something. I've kind of seen that with Dallas too. It's an underrated city. It's got great restaurants that are from literally every corner of the world that in high quality. And with the arts and that kind of thing, we've really seen it grow and explode. So it is really fun to kind of watch that happen in your city.
Yeah, when it happens. So I like it, and I'll be in Dallas with our master distiller soon, actually. So
Oh, when?
April. We'll send invitations when everything is done. But it's mid-April. It's the flights are being booked
Great.
as we talk.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm in
Excellent.
Orlando right now, but we're headed that way, so we'll be there.
Nice.
Yeah, that'll be awesome.
Oh, so Orlando's home or Dallas?
Well, Dallas is home. That's where my wife and I have built our lives and our friends and our network. But we bought a house during COVID here in Orlando. She's always wanted to live outside of Dallas, and then her parents, are aging. They're getting pretty close to 80. So, and her brother lives here. So she's like, let's. We got the unicorn house is really what happened. We just were looking and kind of it was a dream, right? Or thought, and then the unicorn house happened, and within like 2 weeks we had a house. So it was pretty
And
cool.
and you have Harry Potter World down the road. So what more do you want?
Oh yeah, I just spent 4 days at Disney last week. I had my
Exactly.
Japanese cousins in town, and they love Disney. And I never knew this, but they pin trade. Have you ever heard of this? They get pins like lapel pins, and they trade
Yeah.
them all over the world. So like if you have you
Wow.
trade, you can only do two, but at each station you can trade pins. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it
I
is
love
cool.
it.
You learn something new every day, right?
Yes. Sure, bartenders trade pins. Sorry. Yeah.
No,
Anyway.
that's probably true. Or consumers steal them like me on accident. So should we get right into the brand then?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
What can I tell you?
Let's start from the very beginning. Napkin.
Creating force.
It started on a
Oh, the
napkin.
back of the right. Yeah. This is true. Um, I'd worked for another gin company. It's no secret. Many people know it. A few, in fact, few of the best. And I definitely I would call it a narrow mind because I felt that there wasn't a reason to ever create a new gin. I felt that there was enough great gins out in the world. This is before the gin boom.
Yes.
This is a very naive person saying this, a very naive version of me. Um, but it was a bartender friend of mine. His name is Sasha Petrosky. He is uh, very he's no longer with us in this world, but when he was one of the forces of nature that really helped the cocktail renaissance.
Awesome.
He's inspired so many people, and the people he inspired love him so much, and so many of the great bars around the world came from his influence. And one of the other things that came from his influence is Ford's gin, because he was the one that said you should do a gin.
Can you give
And
a
I
time
said, well,
frame of when that was?
yeah, I would say about 2008, 2009.
Okay.
2008, I think we started talking about it first.
But for
It would
him, it
take a
was
long
the
time.
cocktail revolution was like the 2000s, his influence.
Yeah, I mean, he opened Milk and Honey in 2000. He opened all these great bars after that, Little Branch, White Star, the Varnish out in Los Angeles. I think he was a part of the Everly out in Melbourne. Milk and Honey opened in London. I think that was 2002 or 2004, around then anyway. I mean, obviously a large footprint of influence all over the world
Yeah.
that he'd created. But, his home was New York City. And that's where I was living at the time. And we would have monthly dinners, and we would spend a lot of time with each other. And he said to me that I should really do a gin. And I actually said, I don't think so. There's plenty of good gins out there in the world already. I don't think we need another one. And he convinced me that we did. And the way he did that was by saying to me, Simon, what's your favorite gin and a gin and tonic? And I told him. And he said, what's your favorite gin and a martini? And I told him. And he said, what's the favorite gin and a Negroni? And I told him, and the gin fizz. And he went on, right? He asked me about 8 different cocktails. And I named 8 different gins. And we sort of had this saying that if you like gin, you could probably tell us your favorite gin, but if you love gin, your answer would probably be something along the lines of, my favorite in a gin and tonic is this, my favorite in a martini is that. And so
you think
he's,
do, do you think it's because um the way the ingredients within a gin is so different that it's in varying that it really requires or it merges metals or whatever tastes a lot better you know with certain citrus or other tonic or whatever.
it's absolutely that. Without a shadow of a doubt, when we took it to the next level, this very same conversation, we were like, why is that gin your favorite in a gin fizz? And it's the juniper and the cream, and they just love each other. And it's like, why is that gin your favorite in a martini? And it was the balance and the vibrancy of citrus, but the overall balance of flavor within it. There wasn't, it was the more balanced gins, the ones that maybe had slight sweetness to it that made really good martinis. Of course, there were certain drinks where citrus made a lot of sense. And so it was absolutely because of the various different things that those gins did well as to why they worked well in those cocktails. And most of those reasons derive from the flavors and the ingredients that they were using. And so that's what sort of inspired Ford's. He was like, okay, great, but if I have one gin in my well, or I can only afford to buy one bottle of gin, which one would I buy? And that was where we sort of got into huge debate. And so the idea of Ford's was, let's try and make a jack of all trades gin. Perhaps might not be a master of one thing, but something that works well in all of these drinks. And where the napkin comes in is we wandered down to one of our favorite bars in New York City, late night bars. We took a big pile of books with us, things like the Flavor Matrix and the guides to pairing flavors. We took cocktail books, we took books on botanicals, we took gin books, and we started looking at the most popular gin cocktails, essentially the cocktails that made gin famous. Looked at the flavors in them, the ingredients in them, and started looking at the flavor pairing guide for things that paired with those flavors that could be used to make gin. So essentially the botanicals that could be used, and started creating flavor maps like a chef might put
Wow.
together a recipe. And we started conceptualizing gins that we thought would work well with, vermouth and things like bitters, or with lemon citrus and lime citrus, and with other ingredients found in commonly in the classic gin cocktails. And so we had all these concepts that we wrote on the back of napkins. But honestly, at this point, that's all they were, was conceptualized flavors. This wasn't written up with the knowledge of how to distill with those particular products. This wasn't written with the knowledge of how much we would need of each of those flavors within a gin for that gin to work. It was really just what flavors work with the flavors found in classic gin cocktails that we could make a gin with in botanicals. And it's a really nice thought process. It
Mm-hmm.
starts by going, we want to make something that tastes good in drinks. Let's really think about that before we even try to make this thing. But of course we didn't have a gin distillery. We weren't gin distillers. And that was when we decided to take our concepts to as many people that were gin distillers as possible. And so we pulled out the Rolodex, um, and and we started phoning up friends who had distilleries or brand ambassadors that were connected to gin brands to see if any of them would be interested in making some of our concepts for us. And I think out of about 30 to 40 that we phoned, about 5 said yes. And then we sent the same recipe to all 5. And we tried the results when they got back to us. There was one clear
Cool.
favorite. We did it again. We did a second round to make sure it wasn't a fluke. And that same place was a favorite. And we called that person up. And obviously, we'd engaged these distilleries already. They were interested in working with us to some capacity. But we called this particular distillery up and said, all right, we would love to make a gin with you. This is what we are thinking. And they said yes, which was great. And it turned out there was a really good reason why this distillery had made great gins for us because the distiller there, um, at the time, had probably been making gin for more than a decade. But he came from a family who'd been making gin since 1680,
Oh,
and
wow.
he was the 11th generation gin distiller. So there was
Wow.
knowledge that he had, and so when we sent him our concepts, before he even put those flavors in the still, he was able to call us up and say things like, "This one probably won't work if you place it into a still. The flavors won't be there the way you want them to. But how may I suggest these botanicals instead that might bring you something similar to what you're looking for?" And so we were able to work with his expertise,
That's cool.
which was great. Yeah, I really liked it. I feel like the whole process of developing Fords, which is one of the best experiences of my life, certainly my professional life. Um, that whole experience was here's this 11th generation gin distiller, and we're learning from him as we do this, and it's amazing. And here I am talking to, at the beginning, Sasha, but by the end, dozens of bartenders were helping and putting input. But here I am talking to some of the best bartenders in the world. Actually, Charles Maxwell bought in a company called Joseph Flack and Sons, who had been importing gin botanicals for over 125 years, and they were offering their expertise on where to source from, the most sustainable places, the better ingredients, where the ingredients are indigenous, and where the best versions of it come from,
Yeah.
where the most consistent versions. And so
It's so
I'm
cool.
sitting right.
Yeah.
If you don't love these moments in life, I don't know what you'll love. It's just like learning from people that are passionate. Learning from the gin distiller who's so passionate. Learning from bartenders that are passionate about hospitality and cocktails. Learning from a nerd about botanicals. Like the best juniper comes from these hills. It was so much fun. It's fun for me, and we set on this journey to make gins, and every time we made a gin, we would test that gin in our favorite gin cocktails, which it was a list of about 7 at the beginning. It ended up being a list of about 15. I think we even ended up with a list of 19. We were just testing it in
That's
cocktails.
awesome. Well, that's what you got to do, right? To get the right mix.
I don't think many people take that approach. I mean, maybe more people these days, but most are built on traditions.
Yeah.
We were sort of
100%.
taking this idea. Yeah, we followed the traditions because there's respect. If you're creating something, you want to respect them, but you also want to modernize it and look at it
Exactly.
with a modern eyes. And I think that's what we were trying to do. We ended up with a London dry gin, and that's the traditional part. But we didn't set out to make a London dry gin. We set out to make a gin that worked well in mixed drinks and cocktails, and it just ended up being London dry. And that makes sense to me too, because if you think about it, London dry gin is in all those classic drinks that we
Yes.
set out to taste good in.
Right.
So so it sort of was a self-fulfilling prophecy in that sense. So the whole journey was quite magical. It took us about 2.5 years to develop that recipe. We were really, really into the process. We were really into getting people's feedback. We were really interested in how bartenders would use it, what they thought of it, before we were in any way confident. I actually think we were a little bit too perfectionist, but I was really nervous because at some point in the process, everyone had voted that my name should go on the bottle,
Ah.
and I'm like, and that turned me into a nervous wreck. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, if this has to be perfect. And of course, they kind of regretted it at one point too. They're like, "Is it ready yet? Is the gin ready?" I'm like, "No, I need to do one more batch. I need to
It's got my name on it.
yeah,
Oh, that's so funny.
exactly. Scared of failure. I don't know. I mean, that's human nature, I guess.
Yeah,
So
100%. Yeah.
yeah,
Wow, two and a
it was
half
a fun journey.
years. So that
Yeah,
was from napkin night, 2.5 years till you had a bottle to sell.
I would say it took even longer than 2.5 years from napkin night.
Yeah.
I think it was about 2.5 years of really product development. It's interesting. It's September, February 29th, 2012.
That's my what bird? What sorry, what month?
Pardon. Okay, so I'll tell you. So in October of 2011, we finally finalized the recipe for
Okay.
Fords. And on the 29th of February, 2012, we we distilled the very first batch that was going to be bottled. So I consider the 29th of February the birthday of Forge Gin.
Nice.
Are
I'm a
you
leap
a
year.
leap year?
Yes, I, I was meant to be part of this brand and telling your story. That's so cool. Yeah.
It's funny. So yeah, so technically, Forge Gin turns 3 if you count leap years. This 29th of February.
Nice. Well, happy birthday to Forge Gin. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Oh, that is
it
great.
is fun. I like that, and it was by accident. It was just like 29th of Feb, and we put the date of the date, the 29th of February, is in one of the stamps on the label. So it's in there as a little homage to the first ever batch we made.
It
It would
it
take
is
me, Jesse.
on this bottle.
Yeah, it's in a stamp that is the square one on the top right, the rectangular one, sorry,
Yeah.
on the top right. And if you look closely, my eyesight is going, but if you look closely, the date, the 29th of February, is in that stamp.
That's cool.
Oh no, it's not. I'm lying. It's in there's a stamp on the far right of the top label, and there's a bottle in that stamp.
There it
I
is.
think the date's in that.
There
Is
it
the
is.
date in that?
Yeah.
I haven't got my reading glasses. So yeah, the dates there of the first batch.
That is
Every
so cool.
stamp on that label, or every part of that label, it tells a little part of the story. It's full of Easter eggs, as they say.
That's
And
awesome. I love that. Is there other Easter
yeah,
eggs that we need to talk about?
there's I mean, I that's there's a little in the stamp, the original rectangle stamp. There's SF, which are my initials, and CM, which is Charles Maxwell, who's the master distiller.
Okay.
So there's an Easter egg there. Um, yeah, there's a few. If you look at the shopping cart, um, it's on the left of the bottom label. There's a shopping
Going home to
trolley.
make a cocktail.
You're going home to make a cocktail. Yeah, that was. It says KY for Kentucky because that's where the Brown Forman offices are, and New York, which is where I founded the '86 company with my partners at the time. So that's a little Easter egg for that there. Yeah, there are a few, and
That's
then
pretty cool.
most of the things in those stamps are actually telling you a story. Like one of them will sort of speak to the fact that when we make our gin, we steep the botanicals for 15 hours. It will say that we take about 5 to 6 hours to distill our gin, and so there are little bits of information. Maybe they are Easter eggs, but those things are more like, if you look, you will find every part of our transparent story of how we make the gin and where it comes from. And my favorite Easter eggs, I guess, are not really, again, necessarily Easter eggs, but found in gin joints. It says things like that.
Yeah, that's
I
cool.
really, I really like those little touches. They provide character to the
100%.
label and brand. So there are things like that. Yeah. So yes, it was. So when we made that batch, to answer your question, 29th of February on your birthday, um, when we made that batch, it would take us another 6 months to figure out how to actually import, export, sell it, uh, get licenses, and all of the things that you have to learn on the job. So it wasn't a case of, yeah, we've got the gin, which is what we thought it was. We thought, we've made the gin, let's go and sell it and get some money in so that the company can function. And it would take us 6 months to figure that out. I'm sure it takes people less than that, but for us, we learned on the job. And I share as much knowledge of the mistakes we made with entrepreneurs still to this day, so that I hopefully save them 6 months of pain that we went through when we've got a gin, we can't sell it.
Can can we talk a little bit more about the flavors, cuz I'm super obsessed with that, and I the art of, making cocktails is, I'm just over the moon and learning, and I just have so much respect for bartenders that are so creative and can just do their magic. I can just sit at an evening at the bar and just watch them mix cocktails cuz it's
Yeah,
just amazing.
I'm right alongside there with you. I love it, and I think, you know, myself, I'd been a bartender. Obviously, I was working with bartenders. I think we brought some of that bartender energy to the creation of Ford's Gin, and that sort of excitement that we get in the bar world when making something. For me, every time I see a bottle of Ford's Gin on a bar, in a cocktail, or someone sipping it or order it, I get that same sense of satisfaction that I used to get when I would make a cocktail and a customer would go, "Oh, that's tasty," because for us to be on a bar meant someone somewhere made a decision to put our gin on the bar, which meant they must have thought about it, probably tasted it, and said, "Oh yeah, that's worthy of my bar," and that's a really giant compliment. So whenever I see Fords on a bar, it means a lot to me. It really does. I never take it for granted. From the perspective of flavors, that we ended up, obviously we tested lots of different botanicals in that 2.5 year process,
Yeah.
but we ended up with a very simple recipe by comparison to all of the experimentation. It started getting simpler and simpler, but it's amazing the complexity you can get out of one of the ingredients in a gin. And of course, gin is named after the core ingredient, which is juniper, and you have to respect that as the most important flavor in your gin. And we certainly do that with Fords. Um, the most prominent ingredient in our recipe is juniper, as half of the recipe.
Okay.
We spend a lot of attention making sure it's a very nice, delicate, crisp, like subtle pine rather than heavy pine flavors. But we spend a lot of time making sure we get a really good juniper. And that juniper we sort of accentuate with the other botanicals that come in. So it really is the star of the Ford's gin recipe. It comes from Italy, the juniper for Ford's, but
Oh wow, that's
gin.
super cool. Where do you know
Yeah,
where?
no, I
It's
don't. I
okay.
mean Tuscany.
Probably.
I don't have the name of the farmer. Honestly,
It's okay.
the
Yeah.
one day I want to go and visit everybody that provides the ingredients for Fords, because for I would say 80-90% of our ingredients, we've bought them from the same farmers since the beginning, which I didn't know was going to be the case, but so for me now, after this amount of time, it's time to go say hi and thank you at some point for all that they do.
That's
um,
significant. Yeah.
yeah, we had to change grapefruit a few times and orris fruit, but now we've settled on the right farmers for them as well. So I feel like we have our partners, which is really nice. Um, so the 9 botanicals were split up in 4 areas. One is juniper, the backbone, the heart of gin. Um, and then after juniper, we have our spices, florals, and citruses. And so that's why we sort of say it's like a recipe of 4 parts, but it's 9 ingredients. The spices are coriander.
Mm.
That provides a bit of citrus actually, and a lot of structure. Coriander is really what shines through in a gin and tonic for me. That's kind of like that's where it sort of plays its role. We have the spice of angelica, which is related to celery, weirdly enough, but it's a dry root, and it's got a very sweet perception of sweet. And so that brings flavors to the front of the palate and provides balance there. And we use cassia, which is the cassia is a lot like cinnamon.
Okay.
It doesn't have as much heat as cinnamon, but it's got. Most people that would smell cassia or taste it would say that's cinnamon. So that's how close it is,
So
and that provides a little perception of sweet too. We have an abundance of juniper in there. We have grapefruit, which is the dominant citrus, and that goes very. Grapefruit goes very well with lime. It goes very well with mint, so it starts to tie those. It goes very well with cassia. Actually, grapefruit and cinnamon. It was done beachcombers, mix, and so that would pair very well with mint. And so
oh.
there's sort of flavor combinations within the gin that support each other and then pair with something completely different. And so
I'm
that's one of the
really
skills.
blown away by the citrus being grapefruit.
Yeah, we also have lemon and orange, and it's the Seville bitter orange. So that's in there. But, we have equal measures, just like a Negroni, of the citruses going in. But it's the grapefruit that kind of comes through the strongest, but it's almost like the pithiness, and there's that sort of bitterness, which really plays well with things like Campari and bitters.
Yeah.
The grapefruit. So it's a nice ingredient. It's one of the things that I love about Fords actually, is that grapefruit coming through. It's sort of when we taste it, I think you'll get it. You'll see what I'm talking about with that grapefruit pithiness at the end. Um, and something that we have in this gin that really complements the grapefruit is jasmine flower. And
Nice.
interestingly enough, jasmine, our recipe is done by weight, and so it's a small proportion of jasmine flower we use. But jasmine flower is very light, and so when you see it physically, it's actually the second most voluminous ingredient in forged gin. You just see all of these jasmine flowers going in, and finally we have this ingredient called orris, which is it's got kind of a violet flavor, and the violet is sort of a little, almost like a mustiness, but it's the orris root is from the bulb of the flower of the iris.
Okay.
So those are the 9 ingredients that come together to give Fords its flavor, and each of them serves a purpose. Even that violent blackcurrant flavor of the orris that's in the gin sort of goes well with something like a bramble. So there's things in there that just complement and tie themselves
That is
to
so
very
cool. You've combined or various ingredients that can work well with all types of different drinks. And you've
we've tried to. I mean,
balanced it
I'm
out
sure
enough to
there will be some anomalies out there. It was interesting. I remember a very special day to me. I took the gin, the final version of the gin, to Audrey Saunders, who is to me one of one of the most important bartenders to have ever walked the world. And she'd opened the Pegu Club and the Gin Mule. I mean, like the old Cuban, she created drinks that just stood the test of time. They've changed the world, and they're almost as classic as, even though they're modern classics, they're as classic as the classics now. They're such significant drinks, but the bar when she opened it was the first bar I'd ever been to that really had championed gin over other spirit-based spirit ingredients, and she was meticulous with the cocktail making, and a very good and close friend. And so I was definitely nervous to take her the final version of Fords, and she put me to the test that night. She made my favorite cocktails in a blind taste test against my favorite gins, and that was a very but didn't make it easy either. She's in some of these scenarios she would blend gins just to throw me,
uh-uh.
knowing that. And at the end of it, I picked my favorite of those cocktails, and of all but one of the cocktails I preferred with forged gin, and that was the moment that I felt confident that I could go to the market. It was that was the night I went, all right, I can walk with my head up when I
Yeah.
go out.
That must have been such an amazing feeling too, to be tested right then and
Yes,
there. Like, oh, if it's not right, she's gonna tell me. This is the moment.
exactly. But I could always count on Audrey for that, for honesty, and that's what good friends do, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
and the one drink that I preferred another gin in, I wasn't trying to win. I was actually being honest to myself when I was doing these tastings. I was like, oh, it was quite a sweet cocktail, and a gin that's slightly more bitter than Ford's is tasted better in it. And I'm like, great, like that's cool. That we can't be perfect in everything, but we just wanted to. What we really wanted was, some people can't afford to bring home 20 bottles of gin,
Yeah.
or there's lots of gins out there that do various different things quite well, but maybe not one. There are some crazy flavored gins out there that don't really act like gins in drinks, and we just wanted something that if you took a bottle of Ford's home and you open that cocktail book, it is likely that this is going to give you a great version of that drink, and that is the consumer takeaway for our gin. And we were hoping that the bartender would feel the same, right? The bartender would take it and go, oh, this makes a killer martini, this makes a great Negroni. But, obviously we hope that it inspires them to make their own drinks too. But, a bit of both. So that's where that sort of classicness of the Fords comes in. And the modernness is that we've looked at the modern day bartender, the modern day palate, and sort of made a classic style of gin around that. It's exciting, it just doesn't reinvent the wheel so much as I think adds another new color to the landscape.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so as you're, testing these different ingredients, you know, over and over, and you mentioned you were trying to perfect it. Can you talk about where the gin was and where it got to make it just the right exact recipe?
Yeah, at the very beginning, things were radically different. You know, the different gins that we were making. You know, of course, we made gins that when we tasted them, we just went there. And of course, we made gins where we went, oh, that's good. And then we mixed them, and it didn't quite work so well. Um, and we did a lot of the tweaking ourselves of the recipe. But you know, when we liked something, then we took it to our friends for their opinion, and then they might notice something that we hadn't noticed, and they gave us their opinions, right? um, and then we just suddenly had crazy ideas. What if, right? and and
I love it.
and yeah, and you have to, right? You know, it's all part of the process. And in fact, our ideas at the beginning were a lot crazier, and we got a little bit more conservative as it went on. But you know, like the conservative ideas were the ones that were making it taste good. You know, but you know, jasmine flower. I think we were the first gin to use it, so which was nice. I
Oh
know there are
yeah.
more out there, but that was a unique botanical for us at the time. Which is really good. But we back in the beginning, we were trying things like bay leaves. We tried, which was a disaster. But for a minute, we were so excited by the concept of a bay leaf, and we
Yes.
put bay leaf in and all those flavors. But once it went in the still, no, that was completely different. And then there were things that we really did like the flavor of. We used bergamot for a minute, but having the expertise, you know, it's got that. In fact, that was inspired by Audrey because of the Earl Grey martini, and having bergamot in the gin, we thought would be a good pair for that. But you know, that fell away because you know the botanical supplier and the distiller have both said it's very hard to get consistent quality um, bergamot every single year. It's a challenge for us.
Mm,
And if you want consistency, we might say steer clear of that. So there were moments we were trying things quite radical. And it was throwing flavors. And at the very beginning, you know, like I put some ginger in one batch, for example,
yummy.
and it made it taste, but it made it taste so hot,
Oh, yeah.
you know. And so I was like, damn, because I love ginger so much.
I do
You
too.
know, that's one of my favorite flavors. It just couldn't, you know, we couldn't get it to work in the gin. I've actually known a gin to use it since, which is, I think I do. But I was talking to a distiller who said you could cold distill um, the ginger, and it would pull the fruit rather than the heat from it. And so maybe one day we'll make a new gin with some ginger, and I'll finally get to live that dream. But you know, there were
Yeah.
things that we threw in the stills that had purpose that just didn't work from a distillation point of view. But by the time we got to the latter part of this process, it was always about a little bit more citrus, a little bit less juniper, a little bit more juniper, a little bit more
Just
floral.
you
It
knew the
was very much,
ingredients. It was just getting that mix of how
yeah,
much.
balance. And that was where most of the work was done. You know, I do remember at the very end, I had this moment where, and this is an amazing moment too. You talk about privileged moments of the bartender industry, the things, the doors that it opens. You know, you talk about geeking out. Dale DeGroff was in London when we had these batches just made at the distillery, and it was the London Bar Show or London Cocktail Week, and Dale came to the distillery with me,
Wow, that
and
is so cool.
I know we tried. We went to the local
That's
supermarket.
awesome.
We came back with the lemons and the limes and the you know, and we sort of in a bag of ice. It wasn't exactly professional bartending, but we're in the distillery and we're making the drinks with it, making sours and things. And Dale got very excited about one of these recipes. He's like, "That's your gin. I love that gin. That's balanced." He was in the zone with it, and he said this one. We were trying four gins that day. These three not so good. They were good, but he's like, this one tastes a bit like this gin. I know this one has this ingredient that's famous for this other gin. I
Well,
know
that's amazing
this,
to have the guy like that with a cute palate that can tell you that. I mean, that's really
right?
cool.
And so so there was. So I actually called my business partner. And went, we've got the gin. It's done. And then I flew that gin back in my suitcase back to New York, and I went into a bar and I was like, okay, martini time. I'll have an X brand martini, an X brand martini. Can you make one with this? obviously no label bottle, and I tried it in a martini, and I went, oh, I don't like this one. It's not my favorite. And I spent I would spend the next, I want to say, few months seeing if I could add an extra ingredient. I was like, it was close, but it wasn't there. But I realized, but actually, we ended up with that recipe. It wasn't. It wasn't that the flavor wasn't there. It just was the body and the viscosity wasn't there, and making it a full, rich mouthfeel of a martini. And so, after trying some new ingredients and then giving up on that approach, I had this epiphany that it was the oil content that comes from the botanicals. And so we started experimenting with different levels of
Ah.
botanicals that provide more of the essential oils, and that gives more viscosity and mouthfeel to the gin. And so we were doing that, experiments with that. And so the recipe that Dale loved that day is the recipe that's in the bottle today, but just with uh, more ingredients used to make it, so that it has more body and viscosity, so that it makes a silky smooth stirred drink like a martini.
Wow. Thank you for
Does this
taking
sound
us.
like a good time to taste our gin?
Yes. I do have one question while we get ready.
Oh,
What would you mix with the ginger gin? Like, what cocktail would you
ooh.
make?
I mean, obviously, I love gin and ginger. Um, I love doing this drink called I think it's called a gin turbo, where you put a shot of espresso,
Oh,
a shot of gin, and top it with tonic water. I feel like a ginger gin would do well in that. I actually don't think it would. I think it would do all right in a in just a classic gin and tonic in general. There's that sort of bitterness that's already there in the gin and tonic. So I think that would be nice. I mean, um, oh God, the isn't the ginger mule, like the mint and the ginger would just be,
oh
is
yeah, 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 yeah.
I feel like
You're
there's a lot
inspiring
of
me to like
applications.
try this ginger and like infuse it or something.
For now, we get our ginger juice or our ginger beer or something like
Yeah.
that. But gin and ginger is actually an unsung hero of the gin world.
I
Not a
didn't
lot of
know
people
that.
drink it. No one really drinks gin and ginger, but I do.
I've
I like
never
it.
really heard of that combination before.
No, gin
It's
and ginger. I like it.
Yeah, my brain is going, yes, must try. I'm not going to stop until I figure it out. It's-
No, right? Well, I'm drinking ginger tea right now, so I can give you a real in real time.
oh,
Uh, yeah.
I drink ginger tea also. I make my own ginger ale
Oh,
with
you
fresh
do?
ginger.
Nice.
It's so easy.
What do in carbonated water, soda water?
Yeah, you just take fresh ginger, you cut off the skin, and then you chop it up, and you make kind of like a concentrate. And so you boil it for like 5 minutes and then you let it steep for like 20, 25. Then you take the ginger out and then you just use that as a concentrate. You pour that in, you put with ice or whatever, and then you just pour sparkling on
Sure.
top. You
Oh, I
get,
like that.
yeah, it's so yummy. I love it so much.
One of my favorite things about the bar at Attaboy and the varnish and the bars that came out of the sort of milk and honey is they use this fresh ginger juice in their cocktails, and I love it. It's
Yummy.
anyway. My love for ginger. Where my love truly came from. I climbed a mountain once in my past life, and it was the ginger that got me up to the top, and I've loved the flavor of it ever since.
Really?
The,
What do
the,
you
the,
mean it got you to the top?
well, the crew that were motivating us up this mountain kept giving us ginger tea, and of course it's got a lot of health benefits, but it was just also hydrating me, and so I thank ginger tea for getting me to the top of. I just acquired this taste for it. I just like, oh, this is good. This is good. Can I have some ginger tea? That
And
was
happy memories too. How tall was it?
yeah. That was Mount Kilimanjaro, so it was like almost what's 19,000 meters, is it? Feet? Sorry, not meters.
Feet? Yeah.
Feet.
I did
Almost 20,000.
Mount Kinabalu in Malaysia, and that was 14,000.
Wow. How many?
14,000 feet?
Wow. Yeah, yeah. Is that recommended?
I loved every second of that being in that country. Um,
I
I
I
love it
think I'm
because it's
yeah.
tropical, right? The whole
Yeah.
half to 3/4 of it's tropical, and then you stay overnight in this camp of rocks. And then thank goodness it's nighttime because you get up at 4 in the morning and you're climbing ropes on rocks. And it's like if I had seen what I was doing during the day, I would have never made it.
Sure.
But we had a guide. Your ginger is my guide. He's like, Jesse, you're here. You're gonna make, because my legs were. I mean, I was literally crying with pain because it. It's like,
Ah,
oh, but it's such a. That's so big, to accomplish something like that. It's huge. So that's cool.
it was fun. It's about 7 years ago now, maybe even 8. So it's been a while.
Oh gosh, I did mine 20 years ago.
I
I can't imagine doing it now.
like it.
All right,
So
ready to taste?
should we try some gin?
Yeah.
Try some force. It's interesting. Like no one drinks gin neat, really. There's no applications where like, no one walks into a bar and says, "Give me a gin on the rocks," or "I'll have a gin with a splash of water." It's not really a. It's not really I'm sure there's someone out there, exceptions to every rule, but it's not as common as say whiskey or
Right, 100%.
most of the spirits, right? And so we're trying it not in its natural environment right now. And, and Ford's is a little bit stronger than most gins, not all. It's weaker than some also, but it's 45% ABV. So we're about to drink room temperature um, neat gin. Yes. And you know what's interesting about gin is there are all these complex flavors that come from all these botanicals.
Yeah.
When they're in something like a vermouth or when there's something in something like a bitters, there's sugar to balance it. But you expect that balance to come from what is mixed in a cocktail. And so that sugar comes when you put the tonic in or the vermouth into it. So it's never the easiest thing to taste, I think gin is. Um,
Well, I feel it's also a
but
very polarizing. Juniper is very polarizing. It's you love it or you
it is,
don't.
isn't it? Yeah, I hope you pick up that delicate level of juniper that I was talking about earlier. It's there. It's when you smell it with just 45 degrees. Once you get past the alcohol, I'm hoping that actually what you smell is the juniper first, with a little bit of citrus.
Yep,
It's
100%.
quite muted on the nose. Ford's is.
It's just,
Yeah, it's very junipery.
but it's just, it
Sorry, what
smells
do you
well
think?
balanced. It's not like, oh my gosh, that's juniper. I mean, it smells like it's got a lot of softness to it and
Mm,
layers, right? Like,
yeah, that's what I love about it. The citrus coming through, and this is we're gonna have some fun in a minute when we add water. But I'm gonna suggest you do a little taste
okay.
if you're tasting. Now, for me, it's quite chewy in mouthfeel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've got like saliva on the sides of my tongues right now,
Uh-huh.
which is the citrus going to work. The predominant flavor on the top of my mouth, a little bit of sweetness, but not a lot's come out. But remember, we made this for how it works in a mixed drink, based on the fact that how it mixes is how the consumer will receive it. So our opinion and our philosophy, I'm going to say, is this isn't the finished product. What you do with it and how you mix it is the finished product. And so if we wanted our gin to have more of the flavor showing on the initial taste, we would have probably lowered the ABV. But that happens when you
Mix it.
stir it in a martini
Uh-huh.
or you shake it, right? So the experiment, and this is why I mentioned let's get some water when we were preparing for this, is if you put a little splash of water, only about 10%, a little bit, it will open up this gin
Is that too
and it'll
much?
open up.
Too much water?
Yeah, how much you want to put? Is that the gin and the water there?
No,
Is
this
it?
is water.
Yeah, you only want a little tiny part of that, just a little dribble in really.
Like maybe like that.
Uh, yeah, I think it makes sense.
Okay.
You should be in good shape.
And then this in there.
Actually, to pour a little bit of the water into the gin,
Oh, okay.
the other way around. Just and I'll say stop. You are probably good.
Dribble, dribble, dribble.
And
Yay.
and then if you taste it now, hopefully what will happen is the jasmine flower and the
Yes.
grapefruit, and when you sip it, it's actually got more viscosity and more body and richness than it had. Instead of it becoming tasting more diluted, it actually now tastes richer and fuller, which is what will happen when you mix it in a cocktail. So
100%. I could really get that grapefruit. It wasn't overwhelming or anything. I just you sense it that it's there, right? It was really awesome, and the the longevity of all the flavors in your mouth after you take a drink is spectacular. It's so much fun because you can feel the different layers of the different flavors.
I love it. And to your point, I mean, it tastes slightly different every time I try it, because your palate's
Yep.
slightly different every day. But I'm getting a lot of grapefruit today. And that dryness from the flowers, from the jasmine flowers, that gives it that dry finish, and that floral long note at the very end of it, and it all is in there complementing the juniper. And there is a flavor in there that's kind of fighting a little bit with the juniper for the sort of dominance on the palate, and that's the coriander. That's because the structure of that starts to come out, but that's giving you some more of the citrus as well. But that balance is there, and you get more of that sweetness on the front of the tongue, so that then it creates that more coated mouthfeel. But again, that's what happens to forwards inside the mixed drink, which is why I always recommend try it without, and you get this quite um, clean gin, but then you add a little splash of water, and you get this very rich, full gin.
Yeah.
And so
It opens up. It's like it just kind of I don't know how to explain it. Releases all these aromas
mm,
and,
it's fun. A lot of gins actually open up with aromas. It's actually a good experiment to do with them. Not many get richer on the palate, but most of them open up, and it's a nice way to actually taste gin.
and I think
And another thing,
oh, sorry, I was just going to say I think by adding the water, it's really more diluting the juniper and allowing the other flavors to come through.
yes, the balance has arrived. You
Yeah.
know, it's we've done experimentations with different ABVs on Fords, and it's amazing just the dynamic change. We did a navy strength, like an overproof at one point, and the more alcohol we hold in it, so that was 54.5%, that version of Fords, the more junipery it got. We've never
Huh.
put one out that's obviously weaker than 45% ABV, but we've tried it and it holds less juniper. It's very interesting, but the ABV holds the juniper flavor quite. There's a scale in which it works.
That is
I never
interesting.
knew that before. Yeah.
Wow. Huh. That's fascinating.
Well, thank you for tasting the
Oh,
the the, the gin with me. I mean,
thank you.
obviously, the most important thing is liquid to lips, in my opinion. Like when someone gets to taste it, then they get to make their mind up. The story is the passion, the story is the ingredients, the story is how we make it. But I am a believer that taste and flavor should be the most important thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's, certainly a part of your success, right? Because you took 2.5 years, you got it right, you
Yes.
made sure it was right. And what, Tony calls it the bartender's gin, right? So it made by a
Yep.
bartender for bartenders. Because, when you hear the story of, you wanted one gin to be used with multiple cocktails, it is for the bartender. It's for their sanity, right? When they're
No,
high
I'm hearing
volume places, it's like, oh, I can do forwards with like these 10 drinks.
hearing that that's what Tony calls it. That makes me feel very, very warm indeed. You know, I mean, he's like the bartender's bartender. He's like the original. He was when I was first coming over to the United States. There weren't many people with passion like he had it. He's inspired a lot of people, and I remember no one was making Negronis, but he was.
That is so
that
cool, which we made on his podcast, in which and for Tony, I made the Negroni.
Tony, I love that.
He used Ford's Gin on our podcast.
I did know that. Did you tell me that?
I don't know.
Anyway, I did. That might be how I got introduced to your podcast, actually. But yes, I did know that.
Oh, that could be. That could be. Yeah. I think it might
So,
have been after Claire's podcast too, because I feel like we talked about you at some point.
yeah,
Uh, so anyway, yeah, but
that
I'm
makes
just so
sense.
glad that we're here. This is so much fun. I could do this all day.
I mean, the hospitality industry for me is one of the most giving. I found my home in it. Not I you know I didn't come into it in a traditional way. I worked in a wine shop. My favorite job still, um, but I met bartenders after I took a marketing role, um, and so I moved into the corporate world and saw what bartenders were doing. They were changing the way people drank, and they were influencing the flavors, and they were passionate and making trying to convince people it's not just about getting drunk; it's about enjoying this, and it's great. And then on top of that, bartenders are so much more. They're curators, they're conductors, right? They conduct the crowd and the audience, but the bar is the environment, the atmosphere, the music, the people that are there, the energy that it gives, and the energy can come from a million places, from the people that run it, the people that visit it, the decoration of the bar. And so being in hospitality is so much more than making a drink or being a bartender. It's the entire world of trying to make someone feel great. And I noticed that for the first time when I was working with these bartenders, when I was in this marketing position. And I thought to myself, I want to be like them. And so I left and became a bartender. I left the corporate world in a way, and those years gave me so much insight into people,
Yeah.
how they order drinks, the psychology of what people like and to order and how they interact with each other, and of course an understanding of the industry, so that when I watch a TV show like The Bear, it makes me feel terrible.
I haven't seen it yet, but it's on our list. I don't get to watch much TV these days, but it's like the third time it's been brought up on the podcast.
Yeah, anyone that works in service probably gets PTSD when they watch it. It- that's I only just started watching it, which is why it's on my mind. But I'm like, oh my god, this is incredible. But also, I don't want those memories anymore. I forgot. I forgot on the day
You
that
forget the
that
bad
shift.
stuff. So for you to go from corporate to bartending is certainly opposite of probably many in
Mm,
the field. So for me, I've attended bar, made like very simple cocktails back in my hometown. I was never, I'm not a cocktail. I don't make cocktails. I'm okay at
sure.
it if I have a recipe and I watch Tony do it, and then I just copy what he does. um, but was that overwhelming for you to try to tackle, like, oh my gosh, I have to memorize 250 recipes, cocktail recipes?
I I loved it. In fact, I remember working with a really good friend of mine who's in this industry to this day. His name's Sebastian Hamilton Mudge. Um, he has a little magazine called Candra, and he just wrote a cocktail book actually. And but back then, he and I put together a database, and we memorized it, and we loved it, and and um, and we put it all up on a website. One of the first ones, actually, knowyourcocktails.com, is no longer there, of course, long ago. Um, and that was through the process of being behind the bar and going, all right, here's a new drink, let's get it up on the website. Here's a new drink, let's get it on the website. And it was recommended as a go-to place for recipes back in the day. It was really quite a cool process. But I feel like most of the knowledge that I still have in this head, because you can't delete some stuff,
Right.
most of the knowledge I have of cocktails in my head is from those days when I was bartending, and I think one of my favorite things was I know how to make 200 drinks.
Mm.
I think that I actually really liked it. And of course, like any other bar, when someone asked for something you didn't know, we'd go and look in our little file and see if we could find it, or cocktail books. Now you can just Google these things, but showing my age. But back then, there was no real database to just access online. Now there's some brilliant apps that you can get and some
Yeah.
great websites.
Well, there wasn't as many cocktails probably back then. I also it was
No, more.
more.
they, it was like that was the era of like all of the shots. Like you got to think of the Tom Cruise era,
Yeah.
and and having to learn all of these different shots
Oh,
and
shots.
these
Yes.
different
Shots. Mixing the lemon drop. That's one I know.
purple haze, lemon drop, B-52. It was very, and then there were all the variants on the B-52. You had to know them all. It was, I think that was an era where there was pride in knowing all of the drinks. The trouble was there wasn't pride in making them.
No. This is a really random weird question, but I think about this. I used to work at Remy, and uh whenever you'd go to a bar, and it didn't matter where it was, Galliano would always be on the back bar. It had dust on it, but it was always, I mean, it had to be one of the most distributed items, and I don't know if it just didn't sell, it just sat there or what, but that's completely changed as our industry has grown, with all these different types. But
Well,
is there a bottle that you feel like is kind of the Galliano of the back bar that everybody needs, or everybody has?
Galley, the Harvey Wallbanger kind
Harvey
of
Wallbanger.
people stop making that. Is there a bottle that every bar should? I mean, right now, it's Campari, right?
Yeah.
That's like you can't, um, move for not having that bottle. Like Negronis are obviously big, but it sort of plays a role in a lot of cocktails that people like right now. But that's spurring on more bitters to be created. But are you thinking more? Is there an ingredient that's out there, like back in the day, that it just gathered dust, and now it's like on form?
Oh, I don't
Gosh,
know if there's that. I'm not sure. Talking about old school, my one of my good friends, her grandmother loved making cocktails and had people over and this, that, and the other. And I've got about 8 or 10 bottles that are unopened of the Kuiper and some other stuff that are from like the 40s and 50s.
nice.
It's so cool. I'm gonna have to figure out how to display them or show them with people because they're untouched. It's just so cool to see how what it was like back then.
I know, and it'd be nice to get someone that could give you some insights as to how it was made in that year and where it was made, and who made it, and just get some stories about it. So that when you try it, the difference between that version. I feel like we do try vintage spirits and vintage liqueurs a lot these days, and we find them, but we don't look into them like we look into modern spirits. You started this by talking about getting a bottle signed by a master distiller at the very top of this. Who was that person for those products back in the day?
Very good
Who
point.
was I feel like that might make the journey even more fun. You might find that blue curacao was made with, I don't know, something completely different than blue curacao is made today.
Yeah,
I don't know. I wish I was nerdy enough to know that answer.
I know that is really cool. That's like layer upon layer of digging in, and it's just
Yeah,
having
I
the
think
time, to do it.
because I believe that the original Southern Comfort was like a peach infused whiskey before it became the thing that gave us all really bad hangovers. You
It's the
know?
gateway. It's the gateway.
The other thing about it is I think that I don't know this for sure, but someone could correct us in the comments or however. But I believe it was actually made by bartenders too. One of
Really?
the very yeah, back in the day.
That is interesting. Well, you'll have to find out. I'm
I
wondering.
should. This should be something I know lots about, isn't it? Like
No,
being
not necessarily.
yeah, but I will say that there are companies out there that were bartenders creating things like bitters. The Bitter Truth guys out in Germany, but there were various bartenders trying to become entrepreneurs in the spirits, bitters, and liqueurs world, and that's what inspired me as well. as well as Sasha and my friends, and and my business partner at the time, Malte, was the one that went, let's do this, let's do your idea, let's do it, and it always takes motivation, and the people behind you to do that. And so I do pride myself in being as knowledgeable as I can possibly be. So knowing brands made by bartenders is something I should know them all.
Well, that could be part of
I'm
your
gonna
next
do it.
journey as you
Yes,
research as you go. Maybe there's a book you could write a book about brands
I
that are created
know.
by bartenders.
I know. I still want to write one about gin. Any publishers out there?
Well, it's a tremendous story. And you could really nerd out with your journey on flavors. I would love, I could talk about that just for an hour, just learning how it just getting
Sure.
into more detail, I guess, than, what we have time with for today.
Yeah. I know, and we're gonna when we're traveling. So me and Charles Maxwell, the 11th generation master distiller, we're going to tour about several cities, 8 cities in the United States in April, doing talks on gin and how we made it and how we collaborated to create Forge Gin. So Houston and Dallas are on the card. So if
Yay.
you happen to be back in Dallas for when we're there, please come and you can nerd out with the both of us.
I'd love it. I'll be glad to nerd out with you. That'll be fun. Yeah, we'll be there. So that's great.
Nice.
Yeah. So I have one more comment about my one of the questions I asked Tony, and the question is, referring back to using Forge Gin and talking with Tony, and being in the industry, for me, gin has had its ups and downs, right? And so
Yeah.
thinking back during those times, I guess it's almost 10 years ago now. I asked him, I said, do you think that Forged Gin, because of the bartender renaissance that it had, did it help bring gin back? And he said he thought about it and he's like, yeah, for sure. Like it really kind of reinvigorated the category because of what it represented and because of the usability.
I I say it all the time, Jesse. There's this a synergy between cocktails and gin. Most spirits, their primary use has always been neat. Or like if you think about vodka, it's chilled and served as a shot with raw fish and things like that in um, you know Russia and the Ukraine and Poland and places where it comes from. And then if you think about whiskey, we drink it neat, and brandy, we put it in a snifter. Like that's the way these spirits were designed and the way they were drunk. And whereas gin has entire history relies on being mixed, from the
Mm-hmm.
pink gin in the 1820s to the gin and tonic, and then of course it becomes very popular with the martini, and you just see all of these drinks making gin famous rather than the other way around. And they're probably more classic gin cocktails than with any other category of spirits. Rum's it has tiki, so that might be the exception. But when the cocktail culture wasn't doing so well, nor was gin, and now that cocktail culture is doing well, gin seems to be doing well, and it seems to be the most featured spirit on cocktail menus right now. So it's kind of, yeah, the cocktail culture helps gin
Interesting.
remarkably, and of course cocktail culture inspired Ford's gin. It inspired completely what we did. We looked at what was happening in the present, but we also were completely inspired by those classic cocktails that made gin famous.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too. I really do. I love gin. There's just so many different types and flavors. And one thing I learned on the podcast was I interviewed Chris Scott. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He's WSET level 1, 2, 3, and 4 certified. He's an educator, and then he does wine
Wow.
tastings and whatnot. He and his wife Jane. I wouldn't have. I passed with merit on the WSET level 3 wines because of them and their program and their flashcards and whatever. But we talked for 2 hours. We had so much fun. But he's like, okay, it's time for happy hour, in the UK. And I'm like, well, what are you gonna drink? He's like, gin and tonic. And I'm like, what? Yeah, just a classic gin and tonic. He's like, so all these flavors are so absurd and this, that, and the other. He's like, I just want a classic gin and tonic. And so apparently, what I learned is that gin is really hot in the UK right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's home,
Mm-hmm.
um, but Spain, UK, yeah, two of the biggest gin markets in the world right now. There's so many gins that can be tried. People are drinking it everywhere. It's even gone down the path of having flavored gins, although gin has flavor
Flavor,
in
yeah.
itself.
He's like, you can't make a
It's
gin without juniper. That's classic. You gotta focus on
like
that. But
no gin. When I was growing up, gin wasn't the biggest selling spirit in England. It was whiskey, it's Scotch whiskey, but
gosh,
now it's the biggest selling spirit in England again. So it really is on fire, and the gin and tonic is driving all of the drinking there.
that's great.
Whereas in the US it's cocktail culture.
Cocktails. One more question about the profile. You mentioned that it's London dry gin. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that means and how it adds to um
Yeah,
the mixability of it?
I'm really proud that Forge is a London dry gin. Um,
I like
you
that
know,
too. Just so you know,
yeah,
I like it.
you have to follow a few additional rules, is what that means.
Okay.
And so, any gin that says London Dry Gin on it, not London Gin, but London Dry Gin, um, probably it's a good start for finding a good gin. I always say look for two things: either the words distilled gin or London Dry Gin on a bottle, and because that means it's been made with real ingredients, um, and it means those ingredients have been distilled in traditional methods, which is about extracting the essential oils, which gives the body and flavor to the gin. So, starting with London Dry Gin is a really good start. The other thing with London Dry Gin that I like a lot is that nothing can be added after distillation except for a little bit more neutral grain spirit uh, and water. So you can't add flavors or um, compounds or anything like that, or sweeteners, none of those things. So that what is being drunk when it's a London dry gin is truly the work of the ingredients and the distiller. So that's something that I like.
Yeah.
Um, and that makes it London dry gin. It's not a geographical indication though. You can make London dry gin anywhere.
Okay.
So that's what I like. It's just sort of you're governed by a few rules that govern the quality, and so that's nice.
Yeah, I agree. It's awesome. Well, this is amazing. Are you ready to jump into your journey? I know you mentioned a few jobs already, but where were you born? Where are you from?
From England, um, the south of England, born in Hastings, but grew up actually in a town called Bath,
Okay, yeah.
uh, which is beautiful part of the West Country. Then I moved to London, found my soul in Brighton, which is one of my favorite parts of England. It's just south of London, on the coast. But London is possibly the greatest city in the world for me, and so I found my way back to London. But yeah, that was really my formative years were all in England, and that's where I was born.
Okay. Awesome. And
Yeah.
so what you mentioned your first job in the industry was at a wine shop?
Yes, in Bath, of all places, and really, a young Simon Ford back then didn't know much about anything, and I remember getting my first day, my first day in the wine shop, and the manager saying, "What should we drink?" And I said, "I don't really like wine," and he said to me, "How the hell did I give you this job?" Uh, and I think I probably said something along the lines of, well, if we open a bottle, can it be like medium dry or?" And so this annoyed him enough that he thrust a bottle in my hand and said, I want you to write notes on this wine and bring them back to me tomorrow. And if I'm not satisfied, you're fired.
Uh-oh.
And he put this bottle of wine in my hands, and I took it home, and I took it to my then girlfriend's house actually, and her family were all fans of wine, and
Thank goodness.
I knew so much about the bottle that I brought back. It was I remember it very well. It was a wine from Cahors. You've done level 3, so you'll know it well. They're known as the black wines. It's Malbec indigenous, and they don't you don't see them that often. But that was the first bottle of wine he gave me. He gave it to me to trick me. I went back, and it just so happened that everyone knew about these wines where I went. My then girlfriend was French, and so I was cheating a little
Nice.
bit.
Perfect.
And wrote the notes, and he went, "Oh, wow, that's good." And so I think the next bottle was Chateauneuf de Pape. My best friend came from the Rhone Valley, you know. So all of a sudden, I'm writing those notes. He's like, "Whoa!" Gave me a Burgundy, and I was like, I told him I didn't like red wine, right? That was why he started with the reds.
It sounds a little like
And
Slumdog Millionaire here.
yeah,
Have you
I was
seen
like,
that movie?
yeah, I love it. One of the best.
That's so funny. So the third wine?
But yeah, by the third wine, and the third wine, the passion that's stayed with me forever was Burgundy, and so it was just a great learning. And so we would open wines each night, write notes, and every single bottle in that store had handwritten notes, on the producer, the winemaker, and I did my WSET at that time, and just fell in love with the entire wine industry. Went and did a couple of I went and picked grapes one year in France, which
Nice.
was nice. In Bordeaux, which was fun. I still have a huge passion for wine. It's still one of my favorite things in the world. Um, Prices have gone up a lot since I was doing it, and it's a little bit more elitist than it was.
Yeah.
But and those great wines that I was able to enjoy then are a lot more expensive now. But I really cherish those moments. And when I was working in those wine shops, and people would come and they would trust you with your decision and choice for wine, and then they would come back and try something new, and you could convince them to buy Greek wines and create wines from crazy parts of the world, and they'd be like, "Wow, I never thought." And I used to really, really enjoy that. And I would do wine tastings in store, and we would obviously have wine nights. Yeah, that's where I started. But of course, that would flow into, let's get some crazy spirits. So we started with single malts, and we'd bring those in. Then we were like, what's pisco? And so the whole thing started to evolve. And so by the time I was ready to bartend, I had product knowledge.
Yeah, you did.
I had a lot of product knowledge. And one of the wine shops that I ran after moving from Bath was in London. So I ran wine shops in Brighton, in London, and in Bath, right? So I became a manager eventually and moved around. And the shop that I was running in London was on the Strand opposite the Savoy Hotel. And so that's when I get my first kind of look in at the cocktail culture of the world. Peter Dorelli is over there. They would come to my store all the time to buy from me for special guests. They would use my storage sometimes, and I would bring in their house champagne for them. So I was doing business with the Savoy
That's so
and got to know
cool.
them. And so yeah, I got to learn cocktail culture sort of subliminally that way. So when it came to actually going for a job in marketing, I had I worked in a store.
Yeah.
I had knowledge of drinks and things, and so it sort of put me. It was a non-traditional way to get into a marketing role, but it got me into a marketing role all the same. And that marketing role was a brand that was beloved by bartenders. And so then I got to meet lots of bartenders, and that's when I truly fell in love with the hospitality industry.
Yeah, that sounds that reminds me of a bit of Claire's journey too. She bartended in
Mm,
college, and then that she started winning competitions, and she's just awesome, and ended
yeah,
up getting into the corporate world. So yeah, that's really
she's a
cool.
true, Claire's a true star of the industry, and she always has been.
Yeah.
You know, she's actually. It's funny that you said to me that she just the way she thinks about things and her insights. She always, whenever she does a talk or a seminar at a cocktail festival, it's always the one I learn the most from. It's always the one that thinks outside the box. It's always the one I enjoy the most. She definitely has this way of looking at the world
Yeah, she
that's different, unique, and brings perspective.
and she normalizes it like it's no big deal. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like it's not like, oh, this is revolutionary thought. No, this is like that's just really healthy. She just thinks normally about things, which it's fascinating. I learned a lot from her as well, and thought about things differently.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's good when someone inspires you.
yeah,
I love that. So yeah, my journey was through wine, and I've never let go of that love. You know, it's still one of my favorite things. I am said to indulge every now and then in a good bottle.
yeah. Well, that's what life's all about.
Yes, exactly. It's there for drinking, not for collecting.
That's what Jimmy says. Don't. He's like, I hate it, not hate it. I mean, he wouldn't say something like that. But he's like, I don't make these. I don't bottle this product for it not to be drank.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if
Well,
I
the
sign it?
collectors
Just
are the
drink
ones that,
it. Enjoy it.
collectors- exactly. The collectors are the ones that push the price up.
Yeah. Yeah, true. So after the bottle shop, got you went and worked in marketing
Yeah. It
and
was Seagram's. They were the biggest spirits company in the world at the time.
yeah, Seagrams. Mhm.
Yeah. They were distributing Absolute around the world. They had Chivas, Perrier, Jouet Champagne, Mum Champagne. I mean, their portfolio, Martell Cognac, it was huge. And so
Huge.
that's who I worked for until 2000. I bartended in Brighton from there. So that's where I bartended, not London. But it was fun to be back down by the beach, the
Yeah.
place that I love so much in England. And so that was enjoyable. And then someone knocked on my door a few years into that and said, "Would you like to travel the world and launch this gin around the world?" Someone else's gin. That's why I'm not mentioning the name. And that's where I learned
Wow.
all about gin. And I always liked gin, but that's where I truly fell in love with it.
Yeah. Well, I could see why. I mean, you're probably the perfect age to get on a plane, and travel and, learn all, learn how to
And
mix it, how to, have it interact within different cultures and different concepts of, within a culture like a restaurant or, I guess
it was
in retail too, that's really cool.
you know I went to places like Australia, New Zealand, Spain, Italy. It was really incredible for me. I started getting to see the world through work, and the friends I made in that period of my life, I've got best friends in Australia and best friends in far flung parts of the world, and it's quite crazy, like to think that's it made the world small for me, um, but also made it exciting.
Yeah. I would say I feel a little bit of that with the podcast. I mean, I'm obviously not traveling to
Nice.
their cultures, but interviewing people from Spain and Italy and the UK it's been really, really, an amazing journey to do that. So
Yeah,
I
of
have a
course.
little bit of that understanding.
And of course, if you ever do travel, now you've made the acquaintance and you say, "I'm coming to Nashville. Simon, are you around? Where are we going?"
Be careful what you ask for. My my cousin just moved there a couple months ago.
Nice,
So there may be a
nice,
trip there at some point. I don't think my wife has been there, so maybe I'll
perfect.
venture
There you
over.
go.
That'd be fun.
All the excuses. But likely, I'll see you in Dallas before then. Hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so. Um, so do you have any mentors? I know you've mentioned a few people along the way, but anybody you want that kind of stands out that you want to mention that helped you? I mean, that person that knocked on your door and said, "Hey, you want to travel around the world and talk, learn about
Yeah,
gin?" Like, wow, that is just an amazing opportunity.
his name. Yes, I do. That person was his name was Nick Blacknell. I always followed his career path, but two steps behind. When I was running the wine shop he was the wine buyer. And when I took the marketing role, he was the director of marketing, and it was very interesting. And at some point in his career path, he chose to joined this small startup company. They weren't really a startup. They were actually the world's oldest gin distillery. But he decided to become the managing director of it. And he was the person that called me up and said, Simon, do you want to, travel the world and launch this gin for me? And so, of course, he's mentored me throughout my career at different points, right up until, I would say, right up until I started Ford's Gin, which is really nice. But he
Yeah.
is one of the great spirits brains of, of marketing. Um, he's worked on and built some of the biggest brands on the planet, and his mind, for me, we were talking about Claire. His mind is this next level. He just thinks about the things that connect emotionally with people. Connect brands emotionally with people, and he's so good at it. And so learning from him throughout my career was amazing. But he always had a lot of patience for me, and gave me a lot of direction along the way. So I do think of him as probably the most important mentor for me.
Yeah.
And then there's a gentleman by the name of Charles Rolls, who was actually his boss. And Charles Rolls had bought this gin company, sold this gin company, and then went on to create Fever Tree tonic water.
Nuh-uh.
And just happens to be one of the great entrepreneurs, business people of our time. And he's always been a part of my life, and and helped me professionally. Someone I've been able to call and ask questions about, especially when I was an entrepreneur. That's when I really was able to tap in and talk to him. So he's a mentor of mine as
That is
well.
amazing.
So I would say they're the two that I think have had the biggest impact on me for sure. You know, I you know Interesting for me though is I often see mentors in the people that I work with that are not necessarily traditional mentors. So right now I work as a part of a team of people, um, and they all come with a different personality and a different skill set. And in some instances, I'm their boss. In some instances, I'm their equal or their colleague. I don't ever really like to think in those terms. And there are so many of those people that are my mentors. I work with someone who's extremely thoughtful and patient, and then always has a great idea at the end of it. And I watch that person and think I could be more like that. And I've got, and then I work with people that just have sort of creative ideas or can see a vision and bring it to life and see it step by step. And I'm working with them, and they mentor me, so I hope that I hope I give back what enough, but I find that I'm mentored by the people that I spend the most time with.
Yeah.
There's something to learn from everybody, and I never want to change that about myself. I think it all the time, you know, and I love a good disagreement, as much as the next person, but as long as it's a healthy one.
Right.
But ultimately, people come with different perspectives, different ideas, different backgrounds, different thought processes, and I love learning from the people around me. So right now, I'm surrounded by mentors.
That is awesome. I mean, what else could you ask for? That's incredible. It helps you wake up every day and be excited, and
Yeah,
you're a learner. I'm a learner. I love learning. I love learning something new every day if you can, Um yeah, that's
exactly.
amazing.
And I do love what I do. I can't complain about life. That's a very English thing to say. Don't get me wrong. I do complain, and that's because I'm English, but I shouldn't complain. That's a better way of putting it.
Sure, blame it on England.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. What about resources that you'd like to share? Is there anything that stands out to you that you'd like to kind of talk about? Like, and it could be professional, professional growth. It doesn't have to be just the industry in general, just
What do
anything.
you mean by resources? Like,
Well, is there a book like if you're a salesperson, there's a sales book, or if there's maybe there's a bartending Bible book that you found really useful as you were learning, or is there podcasts out there right now that just help motivate you? Whether that's for me, that's Mind Valley with Vision. Like there's
okay,
so many amazing people doing such great things that it's such a positive. release, when in energy. Like the last one was the guy talking about how important drinking water is, and you should drink 2 glasses when you wake up in the morning and hydrate. It's so important. Just little things like that that just kind of give you nuggets of information in life that you know that you'd like to share.
Yeah, there are a few actually. Now you've given context. I hear you, and there's a book that always inspired me. Simon Sinek's Start with Why. You know, it's the whole point is to stop and think, why are you doing it? How comes next? The what comes next, but why? If
Yep.
you don't have a why, you probably shouldn't be there, and you should really know your why. The why is the most inspiring part um, of what you're doing. Um, and so I that's probably my favorite book from a business perspective, because it's very emotionally driven, like why, not why as in a 4-year-old going, why is the sun yellow, not why like that, but what is your purpose, finding your
Yep.
purpose and your meaning, to actually do something, and then create around that. And I really love Unreasonable Hospitality, which is the book by Will Guidara. He came from 11 Madison Park, which was obviously, and he was the sort of front of house, the face, when Daniel Humm was in the back, making the magic in the kitchen, and there was something about the hospitality there, and he wrote this book, Unreasonable Hospitality, which is about creating moments that are special for people, um, and going above and beyond and over delivering to make someone feel important, special, looked after. And it's the art of doing that and extending that art. That art's obviously something that I think is very important in hospitality, but that art should go beyond hospitality. That should be us as humans in everyday life trying to do something for other people that make them feel special, important, felt, heard, looked at, whatever it is. And so the principle of unreasonable hospitality, well rooted in hospitality industry, I feel like can take us out into the world. It's about doing something nice for someone else with nothing to gain, and the one thing and the one reason you're doing it is to make their day better,
Yeah,
or their
exactly.
experience better. And I love that.
That reminds me, when you have the bug, you have the bug, and it's either in you or it's
Yeah,
not. And I interviewed Heather Ransom, and she her whole what she says is, I get to throw a party for people every day. So if you're
yeah,
in her section and you're um she's waiting on you, her philosophy is, I get to throw you a party. Well, how can I make this the great experience for you? And I just that just blew me away. It's so interesting to me. um and that's where you're in the right, you're doing the right thing for you.
yeah. I love that philosophy too. I get to throw a party for all these people every day. I mean, it's like that's like bringing that attitude to what you do. Not every day is going to be perfect, and not every day is going to be enjoyable, but just at least thinking about life in those terms. So those would be the I guess the business book side of things, or the inspirational book, um, that I'm at least thinking of at this particular moment in time.
Yeah, that's good. So, do you have other ones you want to mention?
No, I was just going to talk about the idea of finding something fulfilling outside of work too. I think is really
Yeah,
important.
for sure.
That's I we define ourselves through what we do
Mm-hmm.
far too much. We've tied far too much of our identity to our career paths, and there is more to the world than that.
So much more.
And that's just my advice, um, that it's to find those things that define you. I mean, or make sure you're not defined by your work, but or if you like to be defined by something, find things that define you outside of work.
Yeah, no,
It's,
100%. I need to do I need to be better about that. But when you're a startup,
yeah,
it's that's you just do what you got to do.
Well, and I've been a startup,
Yep.
and so I'm with you
Yeah.
there. Yeah, focus.
Focus.
I want my advice to exactly.
My wife's favorite word to me, focus. I need you to focus.
Yeah,
I'm a high visionary, like ridiculous off the charts. Like, so it's hard for
yeah,
me to focus.
yeah. And understood. And I understand that personality.
Yeah.
I
It's
understand that
funny.
personality. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. So, do you have any pain points in the industry that you want to kind of talk about that I don't know if you've had or overcome, or if you're facing anything at the current moment? I know that your brand is, through at Brown Forman now, so you kind of have a really nice team to kind of help navigate all those pain points. But is there anything that kind of comes to mind that you'd like to share?
I mean, when it came to being an entrepreneur, and and being a part of a startup, there were 100 pain points a year. Like I mean, it's like they're endless, and it's absurdly hard to because it's also personal. When you're a startup, it's you.
Yep.
If someone does something that might just be business to them, it's actually attacking you personally. So I lived through a lot of pain points as an entrepreneur, and trying to create a thick skin to not take things personally took me years. you know it took me years, but that's the thing that you have to prepare for in a startup, is to not take things personally, which is a lot harder than when, like you say, when you're in a job and you have a team, and there that the challenge there is creating inspiration and motivation so that everyone feels like they're traveling on the same road as you, to create something, and making sure that work is as enjoyable and as it can be. And you want to make sure people are productive, um, so that they feel satisfied with their work. You know, the more people are doing, it's not about working hard, but you want achievements. You want people to be getting things done. So I think that there's like continual pain points throughout the entire process, and they're never going to end.
Yep.
It's never easy sailing. It's always challenging. And so it's, how can you deal with those challenges on an emotional level? And I've not always been good at that. That's the work that I try to do on myself, is to not take things personally, to understand that, again, all of those different perspectives coming in from different places in this world. Um, that's the pain points from an entrepreneur. If I were to think about the industry, God, there's so much we need in this industry.
Yeah.
I mean, health insurance. Can we start there? If you're in the hospitality industry and we're working in restaurants and bars, and there are some places that can afford to do it, but the entire financial structure. Some people might get annoyed at me saying this, but it's not meant personally to anybody in that situation. The entire financial structure of the hospitality industry is made is being created to put the customer first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're built for it. And the best people in the industry are the ones that just do that naturally, instinctually, and do it and get pleasure from making someone's day better. Like we talked about earlier, your friend who creates a party every day for everybody, right? But on the flip side, there's a system in place that doesn't um, support everybody in that structure. So the people working in it are supporting people, but they're not supported throughout, and it's structured so it's very difficult to do that. So business owners actually are in a situation where it's very hard for them to actually do that and remain open.
Right.
So it's not. I don't blame anybody for the problems that our industry has. The lack of care and the lack of security and all of those different things. It's a nature of how the industry's been structured over the years, and changing it can't happen overnight. It's going to be like lots of tiny little changes. So I say that the pain point for the industry is the people that work within it. You want to create sustainability for them so that they stay, and it can become more of a career. It becomes a career often for business owners, and there are larger corporations, but that is a very top of the triangle. But this is an industry that employs millions of people and provides the cultural
Yes.
relevance of nations, food, eating, drinking, getting
Cities,
together.
communities, absolutely,
Yeah,
100%.
it's the glue. It's the
It
glue
is.
for so much. And so looking after it the best we can, looking after the people in it the best we can. And if you're not from this industry and you go to restaurants, treat everybody in them with the utmost of respect.
And tip.
That's and tip.
And tip. Cash, cash, cash.
Exactly. I know I rambled a little bit there. Is like on a podcast, like there's such a deep conversation. Your questions are deep, and I'm like they can't be kind of met with simple answers. But a little ramble to hopefully share some sentiment and some thoughts. I hope that helped.
Absolutely. I mean, hospitality and that side of the business is really a part of, my direction in my company. And so I love talking about that piece of it. I've been lucky enough to have a couple of people that have created concepts and, um, you know, opened
Mm,
restaurants and understand those pain points 100%. It's the world that we live in post COVID has been a struggle for restaurants because people are like, I'm gonna go get a degree, or I'm not doing this anymore. People are rude, people are not nice. Whatever the case may be, it's just a huge challenge. I think our industry, throughout the variant tiers that we live in, is struggling. Uh, with the change of
yeah.
everything happening.
And yet there are still so many people out there like are just passionate about creating new ideas, new concepts, new dishes, new
Yep.
cocktails. You know, figuring out new playlists to create new atmospheres and whatever other attentions to detail that like permeate throughout this.
Yeah,
You know,
F&B innovation, baby. Which is what I
it's
do.
all those, yeah, exactly. It's all those things that a customer takes for granted are happening for them in that moment.
100%.
It's,
Yeah, no, 100%. It takes a team.
and by the way, we want them to take them for granted. They're not. If they noticed them, we might not have done our job properly.
Yeah. Well, so the last kind of question here is, what is your outlook in our industry? Is there, anything about, your gin? I mean, maybe it's ginger, or is there some trend that you're seeing in the industry that is kind of new to you, or or what would you like to talk about?
The I actually, we talked about some of the pain points, but the positive of our industry right now is it's becoming so much more open-minded.
Yeah.
And that journey is happening. Whether it's people taking a stance and saying all people are welcome in our restaurant, and making everyone feel welcome, which is really important, right? You want if a restaurant and a bar is not a safe space, then what is, right? This is hospitality, and so there's been lots of energy there. The idea that you can have balance, that you don't have to drink all night, but that and that has been addressed, is amazing. The complex world of non-alcoholics, non-alcoholic drinks, um, is really interesting to me, because it's not just someone who abstains,
Right.
it's also someone that might want to be out for 4 or 5 hours and doesn't want to drink consistently for four or
Right.
five hours
Because we
and now
can't
take a
anymore.
break. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, there's that too. But now there's have a break, and that doesn't have to impede upon your experience of hospitality. You don't have to feel unwelcome in that moment. You can feel welcomed by the choices that are now on offer, that are almost everywhere, which is fantastic. So there's so many there's so much evolution happening within hospitality right now, to refine it and fine tune it. The fact that it's taken this long to perfect it in those areas is probably more shocking to me. But the fact that it's happening is the most positive thing for me as well. Seeing how that's evolving, and seeing how these spaces can not alienate people, but actually make more and more people feel welcomed. And so it's not about who you are or what you drink or any of those things. It's about, do you like this space and environment that we're creating for you? Come on in. And so I feel the outlook of our industry is great. I mean, the last 10 years has seen some of the most incredible innovation, or more crazy spirits, more entrepreneurs, you know more fancy barrels of bourbon.
Yeah.
What you name it, it's happening right now.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. Bartenders that are going, I'm going to make this in a sous vide machine and a rotavap, and it's going to blow your mind, and we're going to serve it on a mountain that puffs smoke. Or someone going, you know what, I'm going to do Negronis in my dive bar, and it's like
Yeah.
every level it's improving, and offering all of these different choices. So I've never been more excited. I mean, I can't keep up with the innovation, quite frankly. Seeing what I see out there now is so exciting. Seeing the crazy minds and mad scientists and hospitality kings and queens out there, it's just like remarkable to me. So yeah, the outlook for this industry is amazing. Quite frankly, we got dealt the biggest blow with COVID,
Yeah.
and talk about resilience. you know we're coming back stronger, and I know it's hard because we're not the landlords all the time, but in terms of creatives, we are the creatives.
Yeah.
the, you know I love this industry right now, probably
I'm
more
with
than I
you.
ever.
That's one of the
Yeah,
reasons I dove in. You listen to people say, well, what am I supposed to do with my life? Like, what do you, do what you're passionate about? I'm like, well, I don't know how to translate that into something, because I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've always been. I grew up in an entrepreneurial, environment with my mom and dad, each owning their own business, and so it's just a part of who I am. My grandfather was an entrepreneur and all that kind of thing, and so um, I just didn't know what to do, because I can't tell you how many
right.
restaurant concepts I've created and business plans I've written. It just wasn't the right thing. And so when I reflected, I'm like, well, what do you love? Food and beverage innovation. And then I'm like, this is the greatest time to dig in and really roll up your sleeves and get involved in the industry, because there's just so much explosion going on. And obviously my background is
Exactly.
beverage, you know, but food too. I mean, food and beverage, you can't have one without the other, or I don't want to. I mean, obviously you do, but I mean, the
No,
combination of that plus the experience in these restaurants it's the best, for me. And so,
I love that.
being a part of that is
So
just,
well said. So
but,
well said.
oh, thank you. But it's true. That's the core of, what I really believe in, and, why I'm doing what I'm doing. So it is exciting. I mean,
Right.
and our industry kind of needed it, right? Oh, you got to go.
They're arriving, so we
Oh,
should wrap
okay.
up.
Yeah, we could wrap up. The last question is just your passions, and then we'll wrap up. What do you like to do outside of work?
As boring as it's travel. It's travel and
Yeah,
travel. Uh, it just, because it's about people, it's about hospitality industry. Um, it's just so all of the different walks of life. I love it so much. Meeting new people, learning new things. I don't know where I learn as much as when I travel.
yeah,
I don't know when I interact with people that are different to me as much, and hear their opinions and stories. I love it, or just the culture of walking into a restaurant or a bar, or trying the street food, all of those things. And so, um, all of them are, travel is, or the views that you might get. So
yeah,
it's boring to say, but I get so much from it. I, the moment that you walk off an airplane and you smell an air that you've never smelt before, that's magic to me.
I
Uh,
100% agree with you. We try to travel a couple times a year to different places around the world if we can. So, we're right there with you. I love it.
I, I'm inspired by the sort of, the Bourdain, like the, just like, take the back roads, take the detours, that style, or Joe Strummer from the Clash would land in a city, and the band would get in the limos and go to the Four Seasons, and and chill out, and he would go to a cab driver and say, "Take me to your neighborhood. What newspaper do you read? What cafe do you have your breakfast in? Can you take me? Like I'm gonna, I'll pay, keep the meter running, and
That's cool.
go and see another part of the world rather than just go to where the tourists might go. Just like find something out about the world and about the people, and I kind of like that about travel.
Yeah, I like that too. I love that. Sometimes you don't have enough time to kind of do it all. If you just have a couple days in a city. But that's
Mm,
really how you get to the culture, of that environment and of the people, which is the whole part of traveling, right? is
exactly.
ingraining
So,
yourself into that.
yeah, I wish I could do it more. That's what I will say. And so
Same.
thanks for asking about my passions. It's not really boring
It's not
travel.
boring at
It's just
all.
a lot of people will say it, and it is mine. And of course, I love live music. That's my meditation.
I
If I
do too.
can sit, yeah, God, I can't meditate, that's for sure. But when I'm in a crowd and the music is touching me, I don't want to pull out my phone. I don't want to. I'm not distracted by anything, but I'm feeling that music.
Yeah, that is cool. I love. Well, you're in the right city.
Yes, I
Oh,
know.
this has been so much fun, Simon. I adore you. This has been a wonderful experience to have some one-on-one time with you, and kind of learn about you, but learn about the product and the process of how you created it, and you created it for the bartending world. You really did, which is fascinating to me. I didn't know that story, and so it all makes sense now, right? It's the bartender's
Yes,
gin. It really had a purpose of helping bartenders with especially if you're in a high volume environment, you just need to quick make as many cocktails as you can. That's 10 drinks right there. you know 8
exactly.
or 10 drinks, which is really really smart. I love that thought process and where it came from, and what you're doing.
It's
So
it's a bit
congratulations.
nerdy. It's great. Thank you so much, and thanks for inviting me on. And great chatting. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you. Me too. Me too. I wish you all the success that comes in your, next phase, and I can't wait to see you in April. So maybe maybe we could do some kind of ginger fun. We could like
Perfect.
experiment a little.
Perfect. Let's do it
Okay, awesome. Alrighty.
like that.
Okay,
Cool.
bye.
Thanks, Leslie.
Tune in next Thursday and have a great week. This week's episode was produced by Fedora J Productions.